My name is Myron Contee. I grew up in the 300 block of North Patrick Street, 328 North Patrick Street, here in Old Town Alexandria. Uh, I was raised by my mother and my father, who my father's in Alexandria, my mother's in Staten, Virginia. I went to Charles Houston Elementary School. I went to Parker Gray Middle School. I went to George Washington High School. Then I went to George Washington Middle School, ended up at T.C. Williams. All of my life, for almost 70 years, I have spent here in Alexandria. And it has changed over the times tremendously. My family has been a part of Alexandria for over 150 years. Far as the records go back, we've owned property starting in the 1800s. The house I grew up in had been in my family for over 150 years, and that was up until 2018. We had owned that property right on Patrick Street. My grandmother grew up in Alexandria. My father's mother was in Alexandria. She grew up on the south side, South Alpha Street, right across from Alpha Street Baptist Church. We've seen Patrick Street change from a one-lane, two-lane street, one lane going north, one lane going south, to a three-lane highway, which is now called Route 1. During the time of construction, when we were young, we used to play football in the street while they were building and in the snow. I also went to the Alexandria Boys Club. At that time, the Boys Club had became integrated. It's still in the location that it was then, but it was not a Boys and Girls Club. Then it was just a Boys Club. Going to the Boys Club, we had the opportunity to go to camps, out of town, travel, whatever. I guess as far as I can remember back, some of the memories that I've had about Alexandria were, we were a close little knit town. I won't say neighborhood, because I had friends in my neighborhood, the Bird, the Projects, the Dip, the South Side, Delray. So, I knew all of Alexandria, and we were everybody knew everybody. And as far as parents knew parents, so you really couldn't get in trouble without somebody telling somebody on you, and you getting in trouble twice. We grew up in Robinson Moore Methodist Church. When I was young, that's where we went to church. My father and my mother probably had did ministry there for 60 years before they both of them passed. In the church, we had, just like the church growing up, vacation Bible school, field trips. I guess coming up, the biggest trip I had coming up was probably when we went to the World's Fair, what was in New York City at that time. It's been a long time since you had a World's Fair. And yeah, we got to see sights. We got to do things. We got to enjoy each other. The waterfront in Alexandria wasn't what it is today. I mean, back then, I don't know when they stopped allowing individuals to swim in the Potomac River. Because at one time you had a couple individuals from Alexandria that had actually swam across the river. So we used to ride bicycles all through the city, all down Union Street. The railroad tracks were good then, because down off of Duke Street, you had Santudo's, you had, the graveyards were there, but you also had a railroad yard. So the railroad train used to go down through, there's a tunnel on, there's a Safeway, I think South Lee Street, and there's a tunnel now that you can walk through. Once upon a time, the train used to go through that tunnel, and we used to go down there and try to go through the tunnel before the train came. The tunnel used to come down Franklin Street in front of Green's Funeral Home. There's so many memories that I can think of. I played basketball. I was a basketball athlete. I played basketball at the Boys Club, the Rec Center, and then at T.C. Williams. I left T.C. and then played at George Mason University. And so we used to go throughout the city playing everywhere. We used to have tournaments here. We played, GW became a big area where we used to have summer leagues, where college players would come back and play in the summer league. Most of my friends, now that I think about it, Most of my friends that I grew up with in my neighborhood, with the exception of one, no, two have passed. Even though I have other friends throughout the city, my best friend's still living. But yes, most of the ones, my childhood friends, all but one have passed. It's been a lot of years, but and they passed within the last 10 to 15 years. And that goes to say that's how this city has changed. The progress has come to the city. I'm not saying it's a bad progress. I like what they've done to Old Town. Alexandria has always been, to me, a place to visit. It was always some nice things in Alexandria. You just had to get out, and see them. They have nice restaurants, good places to eat. The wharf, King Street, down near the waterfront, has always had places to eat and places to go. Now, coming up, we may not have came down there as much as we do now, but, because I did come up in a time of segregation. It wasn't, but I can't say I really experienced it to the degree of some, because we might have been segregated and not even know it. There might have been racism and stuff like that, but it wasn't, we didn't feel it as much as some areas did or some people growing up, but it existed. I used to tell somebody the stories about, there was a place on King Street, J.C. Murphy's. I never experienced it, but I remember going in there as a young kid and seeing the signs on the wall for the drinking fountains, black only, and black, white, but I can't say that I actually experienced the actual effect of it as some that I know have in Alexandria. I was born at the Alexandria Hospital, 700 block of Duke Street, at that time, the old Alexandria Hospital. And this library here on Queen Street was a place we used to visit to do homework. I lived, 3 blocks from here? We used to play they had a parking lot in back here, and they actually had a parking lot 2 blocks from here that we used to play football in the parking lot and baseball. That was the activity. They had a moving company on the 400 block of Columbus Street, and in the back they used to have on the side. They used to have I don't even know if they ship like that anymore. They used to have these cardboard wooden boxes that they used to put freight in, furniture in, and close them up. Well, they had them back there and they had them open. We used to play in the boxes. That used to be our little playground. We used to go up there and play. Nobody would ever run us away from playing those boxes. We always could play. Nobody would never say anything or do anything. And someone were on the ground, someone were in the air. We'd climb up on them, climbing trees. Tarzan was out there, and that's when Tarzan was the big thing. Everybody wanted to do the tree thing, Yeah, the neighborhoods have changed, but, and it's, I guess anybody could say that about any neighborhood, but Alexandria has definitely changed. It's progressive. It's been very progressive. All the buildings, how they used to look, nothing looks like it originally looked, and you expect that in a transition. Everything's looking new. You still have, I remember this is the 700 block, so it had to be the 600 block of Princess Street, the stone block, the gravel block. I remember that block has been here all my life. That block, and then you have another one in the 300 block or 200 block of Prince Street. They are the only blocks like that I know that are still existing in the city, that where the streets itself are pavable. To give a reminder of some of the history that Alexandria has of it itself. I am probably, well, not probably, I'm the last, other than my children, I'm the last living relative that I know with the Contee name. Well, because growing up, most of my father's relatives were all passed, except for his mother and one cousin, which was probably still 30 years older than me. After high school, well, I stayed in the area, traveled a little bit, got a little bit of trouble here and there. Uh, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, I started, well, yeah, about 30 years ago, I started my own business. And it's in construction. I've been doing that here in the city and throughout the area for the last 30 years. Around that same time, I began to do prison ministry. 16 at the Alexandria jail. 16 years ago, I became the chaplain. Until this present day, I'm still the chaplain of Alexandria City Jail. It's a good feeling to be from the city and to be doing something still in the city and to be active, after so many years. Because long time ago, when I got out of college, for a few years, I used to run a summer league here in Alexandria, a basketball summer league here in Alexandria. Was for anybody, but a lot of college players got an opportunity to come and play in the city during the summer because they couldn't play anywhere because the league had to be sanctioned by the NCAA, and I was able to get that done. But there were plenty of role models in the city growing up. I mean, I grew up around more than one. Was the days at my childhood were a big part of my childhood because they grew up the same. Well, they went to the same church I went to, and everybody talks about Ferdinand Day, but he had a sister Helen Day, where it was very instrumental in my coming up because she also was a teacher. She taught at the schools around here. You had Jackie Mason, Lucky Elliott. They were some of the basketball players, coaches that were around. Who else? Who can I think of? One of my, actually, my current pastor, when he came home, he was my boys club coach for 2 years. And I guess back then, everybody knew everybody. Everybody was tied into each other's lives. It wasn't a fast-paced lifestyle that it is today. You knew a lot of people. No matter, I'm not saying that life was slow then. It's just that, everybody everybody was tied into somebody else that knew somebody else. So it was like a family network. I don't know if this is a harsh word to say. I don't think the community is as friendly as it used to be. And let me give you an example. It's a known fact that we're building houses that's like castles and nobody ventures out. Back then, everybody ventured out. It was, the community was out. They were into action. There didn't have to be a special event for families to interact. Now it's everyone to themselves. I'm not saying people don't do anything. You have events in the city. I've gone to a couple, and people come out for events. I'm not saying that. It was just a different atmosphere. If I didn't cut my grass, my neighbor might come cut my grass. If you needed a cup of sugar, you didn't have to worry about going to the store. You can go right next door. That type of crap. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't exist in the city. It doesn't exist like then. Well, when I grew up, kids got spankings. So your neighbor could spank you, but now you can't lay hands on. And I understand some of the reasons why, but yeah, it's changed. Now, I still think it's a friendly city. I just don't think it's friendly as it used to be. But yeah, well, and that contributes because now you have a lot of people in the city from different areas, and they're raising kids, but kids are being raised differently than what they did then. I mean, let's face it, they're raised differently, and the average kid today might stay in the house, video games, and computers. Back then, there were no video games. You had to go outside and play. And you went outside and played till it got dark and you came in. So you got to play with other kids. You got to get out and enjoy the outside. That's not happening today. Alexandria still has a network when even though a lot of us may not still live in this city, if something happens to someone that's from Alexandria and they're brought back to the city, we do come back together. We come, we have camaraderie that brings us back together. When it comes to the churches in themselves, I don't think we have the same camaraderie that brings us together because we're now operating with different personalities. Most of the churches, back then, if not all the churches, were headed by someone from the city and that was familiar with the city, or even if they lived in the suburbs, they were familiar with the city. Now, most of the churches are not led by individuals from the city. They come with a different perspective. They come with a different outlook. I don't want to say they come with a different purpose, because some of them still come with the same purpose, but because they don't have any connection, it makes it difficult for them to have the same camaraderie that they used to have. For example, when I was coming up, there was a vacation Bible school. It was held in the summer. The churches try to have it so that each one didn't have them running at the same time, so you were able to participate in several different vacation Bible schools. Your church had one, and they would have more members than now. Now, most of the time, they're operating at the same time, so you don't have the same effect. You don't have the interaction, and you have the different standing. And this is, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but that contributes to leadership and leadership mindset. And and I don't know if the city that the ministry is in is not your focus, then you don't have that power. And now you go facing it. A lot of memberships now in the city a lot of people are not from the city. They may not have the same attitude about the city. City's changed. It's changing daily. I mean, a lot of people moving to the West End or out of the city. A whole lot of different dynamics in the city. I know, for instance, on the street I grew up with, I was probably one of the last ones to leave that street, that block. That neighborhood. Actually, one time I knew all the neighbors on my street and 2 or 3 streets going north to south. Now, there may be in a 6-7 block take from King Street all the way down to Montgomery. There may only be 3 people that have family members that live in those houses. And I can pick any street going over. I can pick Alpha Street. I can pick Columbus Street. I can pick Fair Street. I can pick Payne Street. The numbers are trillion. And so there's been a change. And with change, as the dynamics change, the attitudes of the people living there change. Because, let's say you're from Michigan, and I'm from Minnesota, and then somebody standing next to me is from Colorado. We may have totally different perspectives in life, even about how we operate with the people that are next door to us. So, and that didn't used to be. Now, granted, there were people back when I was growing up, it might have been from North Carolina, South Carolina, or other places in the country, but they moved in, and so they became part of the neighborhood, and not the whole neighborhood having different dynamics inside itself. But don't get me wrong, I still love Alexandria. I'm Alexandrian, I would never not be an Alexandrian, no matter where I live. See, when I was coming up, my mother worked for a congressman. Yeah, when she had my sister and me, and my sister was 3 years older than me, when she had us, she used to work, my mother and my father used to work at the Pentagon. My mother stopped work when she had my sister and became the housewife. And then when I was born, a few years after I was born, she began to do domestic work. Well, one of her clients was the congressman of Pennsylvania, Congressman Roney. when you say any big events coming up, I mean, for me, every event was big. He used to send me to camp every summer in Pennsylvania, you know. I mean, he used to flip the bill. He have his guy take me up there, drop me off. I might be there for 2 weeks. One week I might be the only person in the camp. He would bring I could take my classes over to the Capitol and tour it, So I mean, the World's Fair. The parades were so much of a everyday event here. Not every day, but we had it so often. They didn't stand out to me like that. I mean, I can't say their words were big and fancy. They just didn't stand out. We used to do fireworks in the city. Before they stopped the fireworks, I mean, you used to do the fireworks in the city. So they were big event. Remember the Titans. that I would say that could be a big event because the transition in the school and all that was happening, and the expectations. I think we exceeded the expectations because everybody was looking for the failure, not the success. And for the city, it was a big change. It's a big dynamic change. I mean, the schools changing, the zoning changing for the where you went to school, and everybody ending up at one high school. It was something different.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh. Now you asked me to think way back there. 16, 17.
Oh, so you were in high school?
Yeah, 15, 16, 17, yeah. Because when it changed, when TC became one high school, when the city went to one high school, it happened on my sophomore year. I was a freshman at GW, it was a high school. My sophomore year, it became a middle school and the schools were put together. 1972, Now, there you go again. There were some events that took place during time, during those 4 transition years and before. There were a few racial disputes. They had nothing to do with TC, but the outcome of TC being put together and going there, I think we got along pretty well. For transitioning, that was a big move. It was a big move. Did everybody want it? No. Did anybody end up living with me? Yeah. It was a big change, and things have begun to change. Now, I can't say that change was a profitable change academically for the city. You know what I'm saying? I can't say that it was, and I can't say that it wasn't. Because to me, Alexandria has always had some good teachers, even before they put the schools together. All my way up to Charles, all the way up to elementary school. Now, for as the city is concerned, I guess it was something they felt that was needed to do based on the numbers. And it turned out pretty well. I can't say that it didn't. I think, if I'm not mistaken, TC was the first school in the area to come up with the computers. That was after my time, though. That was way after me. As it continued to progress, I went from being a president, because that was the nickname for George Washington presidents, to Titan. There was a rivalry going on between Hammond, GW, and TC. And by them combining the schools, that rivalry from a school perspective changed. Even though from a player perspective, it continued to be there. Because now you had 3 schools all trying out for one team. So it was fun though. My growing up here was fun, even in the midst of the changes. The thing about living that I found out, the longer you live, the more changes you see. So you have to come to a place in life to to accept some changes, especially the things that you don't have the ability to change. But when I look back and look at the changes and say what would I have done different? Well, you always can say there's plenty of things you would have done different, but I really appreciate growing up in Alexandria. I can't think of anywhere else I would want to have grown up. The friendships that I created, the friendships that I still have, the teachers that I had, the inspiration people that have transitioned through my life, good and bad, those that are still in my life, the experiences that I learned, you know. I got it all because I was in Alexandria. If I had been in the suburbs, some other city far away from this area, you know, there's some minuses and pluses living in this area. Living in Alexandria in itself, growing up in Alexandria, there's always have been, you know, and it's just about knowing them and examining them. I mean, you know, I cannot say to you, growing up in Alexandria, that I never had a chance to visit D.C. But I realized during my time growing up, there were people here that never visited D.C. and vice versa. But that was on itself. By my parents working at the Pentagon, I had a chance to go to work with my father at the Pentagon sometime and get exposed to that atmosphere, you know, whole different scenario, you know. Yeah, Pentagon wasn't hard to get into back then, you know, as it is today. And places that you could go that's harder to get in. The White House wasn't hard to get into, you know. Places in Alexandria, the doors were open. Nothing was shut. You didn't have to worry about knocking on the door and it being locked. Even in our neighborhoods, you know, the neighbors' doors open. You can go next door. You didn't knock and walk in. You didn't have to worry about the door lock. You know, things change though. Community changes. And you just have to accept those things. You know, you may not agree with them, but you got to accept them. I got this from Alexandria, but this is in general. No matter where you live, respect and love the people that live around you. Get to know the people that get around you. Be friendly. Let them know that you appreciate them being your neighbors. Because growing up, I found out, as a teenager, even as a 11 teenager, if I ever got locked out of my house, there was always a neighbor I could go get the key to get in my house at. If they wasn't home, there was always someplace else. I could always get in my house anytime I got locked out. And that was because of the neighbor, being the good neighbor policy that I grew for knowing my neighbors. Even to this day, where I live, I used to have neighbors that they had the key, they moved, they had keys to my house, and I had keys to their house. So if they ever got locked out or if they ever get somebody in, they could get in. And I found out there's nothing better than having neighbors where you're more than neighbors, but you have a friendship. And that, wherever you live, always have friends that live next door.